Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest edition of Digital Beats, where we talk about how leading companies across Asia are driving digital transformation within their organizations. I'm your moderator today, Tech Target's John Panker. We've got two outstanding guests. Let me introduce them. They are both focused on the gaming industry, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how gaming is undergoing incredible transformation. First, we've got Nicholas Koo. Nicholas is the co-founder of Yup.gg. They are a gaming and eSports marketplace. And also joining us from Alibaba Cloud is Ken Xu. Ken looks after the practice focused on the gaming industry in addition to media and logistics. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. I want to start out with you, Nick. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what's been happening in gaming. What are some of the key innovations driving the industry today?
Thanks, John, and thanks for having me. Nice to meet everyone. I think a lot of has been happening in gaming, and one of the developments that everyone's aware of is eSports, right? Esports is basically competition, right, involving players, and it's been around for a while, right? It's more than 10 years, almost 20 years or so. But I think in the last 2 years or so, we've seen esports really take off in a huge way, right? People from all over the world, right, stuck at home, right, and not only just playing with and against one another, but they are also seeing millions of spectators tuning in to watch, right? And all this is consuming a lot of bandwidth, a lot of video, a lot of gaming data traffic, and therefore infrastructure, right, becomes a crucial point because for gaming as well as for esports, right? It's in fact it's quite common to see that sometimes you have a tournament and you see like you're watching a $1 million tournament, right? Exciting, and then it suddenly pauses because of a lag in gameplay or streaming and all that. Just imagine like you're watching a crucial, I don't know, like a football World Cup match, and then like right at the crucial moment, and then you like, oh, it's paused and all that because of network or issues or streaming. So that's quite unimaginable. But it is, we've seen it happen in esports. So that's one. I think the other development we see is again back to because of COVID, right? We see the games industry really supporting a lot of esports. Went from perhaps it could one day be a sport to actually being the only sport at some point, right? last year, and just the becoming mainstream and being adopted, and this has resulted in a huge uplift and massive adoption.
Yeah, there's no doubt that this is an incredible time for the gaming industry, for esports. The pandemic has had such a huge impact. Ken, what are you seeing? What are your clients asking you to help them enable?
Yeah, so I agree with Nicholas. During this period, especially these few years, we see a rise in the eSport clients, right? So the thing is eSport is being for a decade, right? For a long period of time. And recently, these few years, we see especially a trend of eSports moving from the traditional PC big client to the small thin client on the mobile phones. So a lot of our customer actually are those mobile developers and eSport games mobile developers. So for example, traditionally, those AAA games are mostly run on PCs and consoles are now moving to the mobile phone. For example, Genshin Impact is one of them. That is a AAA mobile games. And we see Diablo Immortal is also moving to the mobile. Yeah, and there's a lot of these are AAA games, but in terms of eSport, we see that the traditional games like League of Legends was running on PC. Now there's also mobile version. Then the very popular Mobile Legend. So these two are very popular eSports games that people not playing on the PC anymore, but playing on the mobile phones. So all these mobile phones actually lead to a lot of impact on our internet infrastructure, especially cloud infrastructure. So there's a lot of demand on we call it the edge computing powers that's closer to the user to able to deliver a smooth experience to the user. For example, we build a lot of CDN nodes. There's more and more CDN nodes around the region in APAC area. For example, in Thailand, we doesn't have like Alibaba Cloud, we don't have a data center yet, but we build a lot of CDN nodes, CDN servers there to help to cache the static contents or the gaming and the video content, the media contents there to deliver to help with the customer experience. And we also see there's another trend, we call it the cloud gaming, whereby the graphic is actually processing at the cloud side and user only use their mobile phone or browser to play the games. They don't need to process the intense graphic at their client end. So this is also one of the trends that is impacting the infrastructure in the area, whereby more and more this GPU-powered cloud instance are actually running in the cloud to help to process this media or 3D graphics. And users just need to use a very basic client, for example, a mobile phone, a browser to play AAA games.
Yeah, Ken, clearly this is a very disruptive time for the gaming industry. So much going on. I want to zero in on something you just said about development, and specifically the development of AAA titles. I'll pose this question to Nick first. Nick, what do you see as the main bottlenecks right now in game developers developing, distributing, and supporting those AAA titles?
Well, John, maybe first of all, I'll speak from a bit of an investor perspective. I've looked for investment funds and all that, and we've looked at like investments in the space. I've made some investments in this space as well, and I think usually if we take a step back, look at something more fundamental, right? Investing in AAA games is generally a high risk venture, right? High risk exercise in the sense that it's a bit like it's very hits driven, right? You may have one hit out of maybe 1,000 bets that you make, right? I think that's one of the issues. So because of that, you either invest a lot or you don't, and so that is one of the issues. And then if you look at that, then it comes down to having the right talents to work on your games, right? And now with a lot of limited or closed borders, right? It's quite hard to get the right talents you need to work, and I think with that, a lot of the good thing about the games industry is that the industry has been very used to remote working, distributed teams, and all that, and I think that's just gonna continue, right? And if you look at game developers, after you make the game, you need to distribute, publish, or distribute them and operate them on the ground. And I think localization, language, how do you make your game suitable, right, for the local market, whether it's in Korea, in China, in Japan. So normally you find local partners to share the risk, right? Before COVID, maybe there was a trend moving towards where I think there was less and less of a reliance on local partners and more publishers going direct, and perhaps now with the pandemic and everything, that trend might actually end up reversing and say, oh, it's tough to set up my own team in a new market, and I might end up looking for more local partners, right? And you know what's been in the news recently was a huge battle between Epic and Apple, right? So like the gatekeepers, right? Talking about the huge cuts, right, taken by some of these partners and all that, and I think you see a lot more developments on that front, where perhaps the new business models will emerge, right? Especially just now Ken mentioned about the rise and the trend of mobile gaming, right? Where we're seeing obviously a lot of that in Asia, right? In fact, Asia is probably leading the way as far as mobile gaming is concerned, and then with mobile gaming, and then we talk about mobile eSports, right? Also, and this competition and all of that. I also want to say that actually talking about challenge, right? Going back to a bit more of a current trend that gaming and esports have not been entirely immune to the coronavirus, right? So even as we talked about all the positives and plus, esports actually quite heavily reliant on like physical live events, and that has been really impacted, right? And I've been involved in holding many live events. I think over the past 10 years, I've been involved in at least 100 or 200 live events, and we held one in Singapore in January with Mobile Legends, Moon, which is from a developer called Moontoon, who just been bought over by ByteDance. And I'm right now working on Free Fire World Series, which is together with Garena, this is the C Group, which is partially owned by Tencent, right? And you see a lot of these events. It's not quite the same when it's live versus when it's just purely online. The kind of experience, the kind of content that's created, how to get fans excited is not quite the same, right? And even if you see, for example, this events or tournaments or competitions being held across regions online, we're seeing infrastructure being tested. I think Ken just mentioned about like edge computing, and I think that's going to be a huge growth area, right? Where if my players are not going to cross borders, right? How do I get somebody from Japan to play against Brazil, or someone from India to play against Canada, right? Without without the kind of latency, right? And maybe one last point and hand over to Ken is that I think we're also seeing back to the effects of the coronavirus on gaming esports, right? We're seeing actual manufacturing being affected in the industry, right? And perhaps this is the push that says that, you know, maybe gone are the days of everybody requiring to have a console, expensive console in their place, right? And the push for cloud gaming in a big way, where, yeah, you know what, maybe there's only going to be 1,000 new PS5s a month, and it's better for Sony to aggregate all of that in their backyard and then offer everything out as a cloud service.
Yeah, you raise a really good point. And by the way, if you as a gaming insider are having trouble getting your hands on a PS5, how are regular guys like me going to do so, right? So I think you make a really good point there. You know, Ken, you're working in the cloud space, and I guess the question becomes, as demand rises, is today's current cloud infrastructure sufficient to meet the needs of gamers and game developers? You know, what do you think about this, and what does the industry look like moving forward?
Yeah, so there's a lot of needs of cloud infrastructure in the gaming industry. The reason being is like what Nicholas mentioned, a lot of things a lot of companies actually have this capital controls in place because it's like a huge investment in AAA games and even other mobile games. So the cloud space, the cloud infrastructure actually helps with the capital control, because cloud able to do elastic and flexible payment. It's a pay-as-you-go model. So as we know that a game operation cycle comes like during the test period or the first launch period, there's a spike of demands, then slowly go down, right? And this cycle can be 3 years, can be even shorter to as short as 6 months, because different games, the acceptance of the games is different from the users. So capital control is something that the cloud is able to help with that, right? With our elastic infrastructure and also flexible payment. And also global deployment is something that in the cloud space is very easy to do as compared to the traditional data center space. So there is a thought of like some game companies still prefer data center as compared to cloud, right? So the reason being is there's more control in the data center, and also there is the speed of delivering the game content to the user is faster from the data center. That's their thoughts. But as the cloud infrastructure growing bigger and bigger, and the competition becoming more and more intense, we have many data centers coming up. For example, Thailand, right? This year, Alibaba Cloud is going to have set up data centers, and also Indonesia, Malaysia. Alibaba Cloud used to have an exclusive data center, but now Indonesia, I think AWS and Google also come in. So you can see that the cloud service provider are rushing into these places to sell their data centers to meet the requirement of the growing demands, not just from the game industry, but from overall IT or these developers and publishers. So I would say that the cloud infrastructure today is in some countries definitely is good enough to supply the needs of all these the publishers and developers. But in certain countries, especially in the country like Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, the data centers are still lacking. right? Especially the cloud service provider are still in the process of going into those markets. Yeah.
Yep. So Nick, let me ask you, as someone who is running a gaming operation, tell me first, in the last year, how has the demand for Yep.gg's services increased post-pandemic? And then secondly, do you agree with Ken in terms of the cloud computing industry rising to the challenge and in many markets now being able to offer a better alternative to managing technology? And then final point, what about the developing markets?
That's quite a lot there, John.
Unpack that for me. I probably asked you 10 questions. See if you can,
yes.
you can get through them.
But I think first of all, I generally agree with Ken. I think very good points made. I do want to highlight one anecdote, right? I was being asked to host a top esports team from Korea in Singapore, right? They are like one of the top in the world in Singapore, and they said, Nick, can you host them in Singapore 1 month? I'm like, why do I need to host them? And they said that, well, the latency in Singapore is better, right? I'm like, but you're talking about Korea. We're not talking about Malaysia. We're not talking about some backwater country in somewhere in the sense. But and I said fine, and I hosted this team, right? Some of the top players in the world from Korea, and they came here. They stayed with us, or we call it a boot camp, right? A boot camp for an esports team for a month, and then they came and said, Nick, can we extend and stay for another month? Right? I'm like, fine, okay. And then after the second month, I said, I'm sorry, you can't stay anymore because it's COVID and you now have to go. You now have to go home, right? That was in the beginning of last year, right? But and then everything went online. We saw, I think, demand for our services and all that grow by 300%. To be honest, right? The whole of last year.
300%.
300%.
Wow.
And it's not just us; it's across the board. You see, for example, like companies like C Group, right? They became the world's most valuable stock last year, something or like the fastest growing stock or something like that last year, and a lot was driven by their gaming business, right? It's things are pretty crazy that way. I think I think the cloud industry has risen up like largely to meet the challenge. I think the problem is that everything's growing so fast. How do you catch up in a 300% growth kind of situation, right? In a short period of time, and that's where to Ken's earlier point, I know many developers and publishers who actually prefer, if they could, to run their own data center operations, right? They actually prefer, like, say, more control and all of that. But actually, it's not realistic, because you need to have like a short lead time to ramp up 300%, right? That's the only way you can go is with cloud models, right? And I think that's actually a huge opportunity for the cloud industry to continue to innovate and grow in the business model. I think so. And there'll always be publishers who are so big that they feel that, I can run my own operations. But I don't think that's that trend, that will be a trend, because we are talking about climate change, Paris Accords and stuff like that, right? And it just doesn't make sense for you to have all that capital investment, and then like your servers are maybe you have spare capacity sitting there, right? I think more and more it needs to be optimized. And then perhaps the last thing I'll mention, right, on this is I mentioned it just now, but because of the inability to travel, and yet as the demand grows, and a lot of this demand will be increasingly cross-border, right? So like I mentioned, Dubai playing against Australia, that kind of situation, right? You will see more and more demand for edge cloud solutions, right? That to reduce the kind of latency, especially in esports, right? Going back to my first example just now, where you find that the latency was so important that people were willing to travel from Korea to Singapore and spend months, right? Just for the latency, right? And I think this is a huge opportunity for the cloud industry or cloud providers to step up, right?
Yeah, good point. And by the way, congratulations, Nick. I think you answered all 10 of my questions, which was fun. Very well done. I have time to bring up one last topic here, and it's it's a big one for pretty much every industry: data analytics. And I'm really interested in hearing how big data and data analytics is specifically impacting gaming. Ken, maybe you can start us out and give me a sense of your impressions.
Yeah, so in terms of data analytics and big data, it actually require quite a bit of compute powers. And from a cloud service provider point of view is that we not just provide infrastructure as a service, those game backend servers and edge service, edge computing, right? We also provide this platform as a service or software as a service, and big data and data analytic platform or software running on the cloud and provide this service to our customer, like those game developers, is also one of our very big market space, right? So it actually lower the entry barrier or even the technical barrier for these developers to use these platforms, to use big data, to use big data analytics. So what they can use these things for? So data analytic platforms on the cloud, they can use to do something we call it the game data operation, end-to-end data operations. How it does is actually they use some type of service log services to track the user behavior in the games and use this data to analyze the behavior of the gamers and also to find out any of the good products, good services that the games can come up. For example, in the games, especially nowadays mobile games, there's a lot of microtransactions, microservices inside, microtransactions products inside. They need to find a way to find out which is the optimum way, which is the optimum product, microtransaction products to offer to their customers. So data analytics running on the cloud can help them to do this easily, right? And also they also need to use some type of data presentation or data dashboards to help them visualize what the users, what the gamers are actually doing in the game, like which feature or which type of a game functionality is best suited for their gamers. So data analytics also helps with that as well. So that's my point of view from the cloud service provider. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of use cases for big data and data analytics. What about it? Yup.gg. Nick, how are you guys using it?
Yeah, I think first of all, I want to say that data analytics have already been used extensively in gaming business, right? And in fact, I would say that the games business is largely a data-driven business, right? And I also see that I can also say that the cloud business actually is native to data analytics. And when you put the two together, right, the games industry, the cloud industry, and all that, it's just yeah, it's more data, more machine learning, and then with that, being more informed by AI. I think in that sense, I think at Yup, what we're trying to solve is how do we provide better insights to let's say somebody who okay, like what we're seeing is that esports and gaming is accessing an audience, right? A millennial audience that's not found somewhere else. Like they are not watching TV. They are cord cutters. They're found on Twitch, not necessarily on other platforms, for example. And we found that there's a lot of brands or a lot of advertisers who are interested in this audience, and they realize that they need to shift. They need to find a way to engage them. And I think as Yup, that's one of the things we're trying to help solve, right? When they come in and say, oh, we don't understand this, it's too complex, there's too many game titles, we don't understand the data, and then we try to pull all the data, as much data as possible, real time, live, help this advertisers and brands make sense of this data. How do you reach and access this audience, right? And I think some of the insights, right, has been I think some of has been really interesting, and I think it's still for us. Then we still feel that it's early days, right? There's still a lot more we can provide in terms of insights, and I think a lot more we would require in terms of machine learning, compute capabilities, and all that. But I also perhaps I'll also add one thing is that for cloud gaming in particular, right? It still feels like we're in the early days, we're in the beginning, right, of a major trend, right? And we've not fully seen this promise at this time, right? For example, right, everyone talks about Stadia, right? We have not fully felt its impact, right? And I think this trend is here to stay with 5G and everything, right? It will continue to grow. And I think data analytics, right, machine learning and AI will just help to advise and to inform, right, the business owners how to grow the business, where to take the business model. So I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, actually, I want to add one point to have that point. The thing about eSport, right, in terms of data analytics in eSport, I think it also helps in terms of balancing the game. I see recently there's quite a bit of trends that are like Street Fighter, because the games need to be balanced in order to become an esport. If not, it's certain characters in the game or certain functionality in the game is not balanced, then the esport won't be successful. So a lot of big data is used in this area. Yeah, in the balancing the esport area. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good point. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing is definitely clear. This is a very exciting time for this industry. Great insights from you, Nick. You as well, Ken. I'm so appreciative for your time. Really grateful to everybody who joined us today as well. We look forward to seeing you next time right here on Digital Beats.